It's the PGN Par 4 coming to you here near the end of April, full-fledged golf season, both pros and also the amateur ranks. I'm Matt Gajtka along with Zach Weiss, both of us of Pittsburgh Golf Now. We got some new content coming up for you on the site. My story on Austin Greaser, the runner-up at Oakmont last year at the U.S. Amateur. You may have seen that he tied for low amateur at the Masters just this a couple of weeks ago, earlier this month. And he'll be playing in the U.S. Open as well. So thanks to Zach for setting up that teleconference, able to touch base with him and get something new on the site as far as reporting is concerned. It's been a little while there. So mea culpa there, but hey, we're back on the horse. And Zach has some interesting subject matter coming up related to one of the legendary amateur golfers from the Pittsburgh area and what he's up to these days. So keep an eye on Pittsburgh Golf Now for all of that. As for right now, it is the Par 4, so we're going to take a swing at 4 golf topics. And we'll start on the Pro Tour. We'll start with the PGA Tour, and we'll start with the season's first major, Zach, won by Scotty Scheffler. Now 4 wins in the calendar year, and the young man, 25 years old, formerly of the University of Texas, Texas native, has risen to the top of the world golf ranking as well. So it feels a little meteoric, but at the same time, I think those of us who've watched the PGA Tour over the past couple of years know that Scotty was knocking on the door for a while, had a couple of chances to win on tour and didn't quite convert. That's certainly not a discredit to him by any means. You put yourself there enough, and eventually, usually, the door does break down, and he has broken it down in a big way. But he came through big for the U.S. team at the Ryder Cup last fall at Whistling Straits, in particular, taking out then number 1 Jon Rahm in the Sunday singles and pretty much eliminating any chance of a European comeback in what became a huge blowout. So Scheffler, yes, Zach, the swing is idiosyncratic. I think his personality is starting to show through, so he's less of an enigma in that way. But how do you feel about this rise for Mr. Scheffler? He's certainly an interesting golfer and, a player who has proven his bona fides over and over again this year and essentially running away with the Masters, even though he only, quote unquote, won by 3, but he was in control over the weekend. So impressive stuff. But do you feel like we have a new arrival on as far as the competition for majors year in and year out, or is this more of a 1-year flash? How do you feel about the situation?
It's so tough to tell because so many golfers hit these hot streaks where they're showing so much form, and then for whatever reason, extended break, too much thoughts get in the head, a swing change, a coach change, just results not going your way, things change. I mean, look at Jon Rahm. He was poised, he was number 1, and then he was poised to stay that course for quite some time, but some inconsistent play by his standards led to what we're seeing now, and we haven't seen this since the mid-20 teens with Jason Day, and here comes Scotty Scheffler, and it seems like the only thing that might get in his way right now is his mind, and it tried to run rampant Saturday night into Sunday with a familiar position in an unfamiliar setting being in a major, but he was able to pull through, and credit to him. I mean, having Ted Scott on the bag, a guy that, of course, caddied Bubba Watson to multiple major titles, is very, very helpful. Definitely something that helps, knowing that if he's missing a read or if he needs a boost, that he has a guy that's been on the bag, that's a good player in his own right, that's established to handle those conditions. Can he maintain it? That's what we're going to have to see. I mean, we remember a couple of years or so ago when Francesco Molinari was on a stretch like this, and one shot into the water at 12, and he hasn't at the Masters, and he hasn't been the same guy since. And he was that quote-unquote other guy that lost to Tiger Woods at that Masters. And it was looking, I was 18 into 19 when Tiger won in 19. So, I mean, we've seen dominance like this before that's led to major success very recently, and now the ball's in Scotty's court, and it seems like so far the fame or the extra attention hasn't changed him much. He remains unflappable. He remains in his game, or as the kids would like to say, in his bag. But that's really what it comes down to, is him keeping things simple. You see so many times that being number 1 is what you dream of, but sometimes it's a cautionary tale. Keeping that level of success, the media attention, the inevitable sponsor opportunities that come, more attention when it comes to pro-ams, more people that want more time that maybe he's not going to necessarily be willing to give, and having the right temperament to balance that. All of these things now come into play, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. And it does affect what you're able to do on the golf course, even getting as much of a peace of mind might not necessarily be as easy as it once was, and it's all because of a 6-week stretch. And it's hard to fathom, but you know what? That's golf. That's what makes it interesting, and that's what keeps you coming back. You dream for stretches like this. Now that you've had the stretch like this, it's how you can react and move forward to it. So full credit to Scotty Sheffler. Even though he was very nervous inside, he was unflappable outside of it. The blemishes were contained, and even when Cameron Smith was making his early runs, he had a couple of them, one on the front, one on the back. Scheffler kept his nerve, and it would have been easy for him not to, but just the dream was not to be denied. So a huge credit to him for holding it, and we'll have to see. I mean, would we like to see him hold it? Of course, you want to see any golfer succeed, but can he? That's the question.
I think his youth helps him out, just 25, as I mentioned at the top of the show. So in theory, he should still be on the rise in terms of his skill set compared to a guy like a Molinari, I think, who you mentioned. And yes, Molinari got hot. Golfers do get hot and sometimes rise to the very top of the world golf ranking, get a couple of majors, clicked off. We saw Padraig Harrington, of course, have a mid to late career. I guess it's mid career rise and a streak in which he captured 3 majors in a 2-year span. Tiger was out for some of those, but still he made hay while the sun shined. And I know that number one is one thing, Zach, when it comes to entering a major, as he did at the Masters as the top dog in the world golf ranking, but to now claim a major, we all know that makes it a different scenario, different expectations, like you said, different obligations, and new ways to be distracted from the process that got you to where you are. But seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and seems to have a good, stable family life right now with his young wife Meredith as well. So he's about as well positioned as anybody to keep it going, but golf is fickle, as we all know. So we could have already seen the best of Scotty Scheffler, not just for this year, but for his career. But we'll see how it plays out as we head down to the next major championship, which is the PGA Championship in May. Now, let's not go too far forward, though. In terms of what happened at Augusta, we haven't covered that yet on one of these shows. So obviously the story coming in was the return of one Eldrick Tiger Woods to the golf course and to actual elite competition, not a hit and giggle, as he called it, at the PNC Championship with his son Charlie over the holiday season. He looked okay there, and Zach, that caused me to believe that I thought he was going to come back for the Masters. It seemed like he had enough time between the PNC Championship and the Masters to get his legs in better shape. And as we saw, he was still in pain, limping rather heavily at times, but the swing looked surprisingly good outside of some fatigued passes at the ball at certain points in the rounds at Augusta. He makes the cut. The only thing that really lets him down is his putter, as he had a 4-putt and several other 3-putts in that Saturday round that really knocked him out of competition. But hard to say it's anything but a success here for Tiger. He was smiling a ton. Gratitude is a huge part of his life right now, as it certainly should be, if it wasn't already, after the multiple back surgeries and just getting back to high-level competition, which he did in 2018 and 2019, as we all remember, winning the Masters and then winning the Zozo to tie Sam Snead for the most victories in PGA Tour Championship. Still on 15 major championships and 82 PGA Tour wins, by the way. He confirmed that he would play at the Open Championship at St. Andrews. I think we all thought that would be a probability or a likelihood coming into this calendar year. I still think we're going to see him at all the majors this year, Zach, and maybe 1 or 2 more. But I guess it all depends on what's going on right now at home. We don't know how he's recovering from all that. So was there anything about Tiger's return to the course that surprised you? I guess I would say the fact that the putting wasn't so good. I thought maybe he would have extra time to work on the short game. But perhaps just the accumulated mental fatigue of all that he has to put his body through to get on the golf course and all the hoopla at the Masters. It could be that was a little overwhelming, even for a guy who's been through it all. So I suppose that would be my one surprising part about what we saw. But overall impressed, of course, and left me hungry for more, honestly.
Nothing surprised me at all whatsoever about Tiger Woods' return to the course. The fact that he went to the course, the location of where his first rounds were, the fact that he has committed to the Open Championship, the fact that he has filed an entry into the U.S. Open, as has Phil Mickelson. So it's good to see that. I think maybe you're going to see 1 or 2 more tournaments that he would have success at, like a Memorial, maybe would be the best chance. Maybe FedEx Cup, but I don't think he's going to get the points if he would get to that position, because he's just not that guy that's going to play 20 starts a year anymore. Let's face it, he's not. the walk was what I was expecting. Come Friday towards the end, I think it was kind of that last hurrah just to make sure that he got himself that last surge to safely make the cut. And I think for him, anything beyond making the cut was a bonus. So what that means is just the walk seemed to get really exhaust him. The exertion of having to do something every day between the father son and this just to make sure he was out on the course definitely was a factor. Playing in practice setting is completely different from playing in a golf setting. And mind you, turning it up from 0 and dialing it all the way up to 100, nothing in between, whether it's maybe playing around with a friend that's on tour, is different than walking the hallowed grounds of Augusta National, walking the Hogan Bridge, playing Amen Corner, etc., etc. Green speeds are going to be a lot different regardless of where you're a member of. Seeing how the course is tricked out, hitting the different pins on different days. All of this is mentally new again for him. Something just as simple as playing with a different guy every day, seeing a gallery again. Well, where, yes, you had a gallery in father-son, but I mean, you can't even get into Augusta National unless you win the lottery or you have some really good connections or deep pockets. So it's a very, very different scenario, as he well knows. So it's good to see him out there. It's good to see him happy out there. It was good to see him show thankfulness towards the patrons at Augusta National. But I really didn't see anything I wasn't going to expect. I knew we were going to see 72 holes. I think everybody knew that that was going to happen. And whatever happened in between was a bonus, and frankly, should just be treated as such.
Yeah, I think I think he did surprise some people with the comeback at Augusta, but like I said, I just didn't see him holding himself back, as he told Jack Nicklaus at the Champions Dinner, according to Jack himself in an interview on Sirius XM earlier this week. Tiger said, "I'm going to hurt this year whether I play or not, so I might as well just play and get it out of the way and not delay the return to Augusta until next spring." So one way to look at it, he said his doctors just told him that he's going to be in pain in some form or fashion whenever he plays competitive golf. So he just decided to accept it, and I think his swing was in pretty good shape. He drove it exceptionally well. That new TaylorMade carbon wood is certainly fitting well in his hands. But I don't want to put it all on technology, but at the same time, he's definitely adjusted his swing a bit. It's a little more upper body heavy. He's not pushing off quite as much from the back leg, but he's making it work because he's got those great hands. He's got great talent and an outstanding work ethic to try to adjust. And if there's any great player who's had experience changing their swing, it certainly is Tiger Woods. He's done it many times over the years, and he's won with, I think, 5 different looks to that golf swing. So a bonus for sure. And at age 46 now, he's got a few more years here, I think, to realistically expect to compete, especially at Augusta National, a place where he could probably compete until he's 60, I would imagine, assuming the body holds up. All right, let's skip ahead to what we saw just this past weekend, Zach, at Harbortown Golf Links, Hilton Head, South Carolina, the traditional tournament after the Masters. Going to get back to that schedule. I know the pros like getting back to that schedule because it's just a quick jump up the road from Augusta to Hilton Head. And the RBC Heritage, as it's known now, produced quite the finish. There was, I think, 10 players within 2 shots of the lead going into the final couple of holes. Ended up being a 2-man playoff between one Jordan Spieth, who missed the cut at Augusta, we should mention, and Patrick Cantlay, one of the most consistent players in recent years on the PGA Tour. And Spieth gets up and down from a greenside bunker on the first playoff hole and wins, despite, as he said, saying in a post-match interview, winning without his putter. Again, Zach, the putting, the short putting especially, continues to haunt Jordan Spieth, always a guy known for getting his ball in the hole when he was at his absolute peak. But he's hitting the ball extremely well. He is picking up strokes gained better than almost anybody on tour, both off the tee and approaching the green. So, hey, the foundation of his game is there. Maybe he's not getting the ball in the hole as well as he could, but talk about a testament to his talent to be able to win while being near the bottom of the field in strokes gained putting. So Jordan Spieth appears to be, this doesn't look like fool's gold, in other words, Zach. He's not scrambling his butt off to get these results. He is, if anything, doing everything but scoring. So I think if he can get the short putting figured out, he's one of the contenders for any major in any tournament on the PGA Tour. But it does call to mind another guy who we've been missing out seeing, and that's one Ricky Fowler. He didn't make the Masters for the first time in a while, and he doesn't have the ceiling of a Jordan Spieth. We saw Jordan dominate in 2015, of course, winning a couple of major championships. But I think Ricky is also the type of guy who can go hot and cold with the putter, much like Jordan Spieth. And Ricky made his bones ball striking in his early career on the PGA Tour. Now, Ricky's seen more on commercials than he is on the actual golf course. So is there a chance that we could see a similar renaissance? Because Jordan Spieth was in the wilderness. He was down all the rankings, and no matter what type of metric you were looking at, Spieth was way off the top 100. So it is possible, but do you think it is an option for a guy like Ricky Fowler to look at Spieth and draw some inspiration there? Because I know golf is better when he is certainly in contention.
Well, certainly, and I think there were some whispers that Spieth was getting back into that place again after missing that Masters cut. Just having played his favorite tournament, and bar none, that being the worst he's ever played his favorite tournament, it was definitely an eyebrow raiser. And of course, you have the narrative of now he's a family man, he's married, and the classic is that a distraction, is that not? Some players do well in that situation, and some can't manage that time. I mean, some of it's tabloid, some of it's fact. I mean, each situation's on a case by case. But I think the biggest thing was his wife Annie helping him in between round 3 and round 4. Spieth ended that round terribly. He missed a tap in. I mean, he had the putting yips. I mean, we've seen Lucas Glover do it, where he's a pretty fast player, and then he gets to within 5 feet, and he takes about 30 seconds to a minute. You saw Keegan Bradley recently take 2 minutes over a 10-foot putt. I mean, these things get inside the ears, into the brain, and it happens, and it makes golfers mortal, and it makes the public more intrigued, because, of course, part of you goes, why the heck are they taking so darn long? But then part of it's going, oh, they're struggling like me, and now they have to figure it out. So there's kind of a Jekyll and a Hyde that goes into that. But for Annie to kind of tell Jordan, okay, take a breath, count to 5, and then tap your ball in, and you notice that it seemed to make the situation a lot more of a better situation, rather, for him in that final round. And it made a difference. Of course, you can be cynical like I was on Twitter and say if he made the darn putt on the 54th hole, then there's no playoff, and he doesn't have to stress out a hole that Patrick Cantlay played in un-Patrick Cantlay-like fashion. So, and that's what it took for Spieth to win on the first playoff hole, whereas he probably thought it was going to be a 2, 3, or dare I say 5 or 6 playoff hole like his John Deere for his first triumph was. So it does bring to mind Ricky Fowler, like you suggested. Of course, an individual that's finished top 5 in all 4 majors, has certainly showed the game, is one of those guys that has had the success, but unfortunately seems to be more known as that commercial guy that is very likable with a magnanimous personality and smile and the many sponsorships. But it seems like the only thing that has changed is his golf, and it's tough because he doesn't necessarily talk to the media like a lot of those guys do. So you have maybe more access to his Spieth, and I think for right now for Ricky that's good, but in a sense it's also tough because it's tough to diagnose what Ricky's going through, and I think a lot of us don't know. And I think for a guy that's played with the biggest names in the same groups, won on some of the biggest non-major stages, and have competed with some of the best in the major stages down the stretch, it's certainly eyebrow-raising. And how is it the game's passing him by? Is it his length might not be as long? I mean, he led in strokes gained putting for an entire year within the last few years. So he's definitely shown the ability to get the ball in the hole. The problem now is what is preventing him from getting the ball in the hole to compete at the highest level. And it doesn't seem like it's an easy answer. And a lot of golfers seem to play the blame game where they'll fire a caddy or they'll fire a swing coach or they'll take a different thought and try to experiment with it. It's tough to know how much Ricky's truly pressing to find those answers. And that doesn't mean that he's not still passionate about golf. We don't know if it's just haunting him where he brings it home with him, and that makes it even less enjoyable. I mean, he's going to be sectionally qualifying for the U.S. Open again. They just made a big deal that he's going to be playing the sectional qualifying, the double in Ohio, right after the Memorial, so which is always a popular spot for players that are in that field that are looking to get in the Open. So naturally, amateurs typically don't want to be in that field because it's usually heavy hitters competing for spots. I mean, that's where Bryson DeChambeau got his first non-USGA affiliated, non-amateur related qualification into the US Open a few years back, and look where he is. So, I mean, it's jump-started careers, but Ricky needs that jolt again. He needs that excitement again. He just needs a week, maybe two, where it doesn't have to be necessarily a win, but it has to be that rush where he feels the game is coming back in again, and you hope that that's enough. But it's tough because it seems like the opportunities are less and less, and as much as Ricky has meant for American golf, as much as so many kids have dressed like Ricky Fowler on the course and off, it's tough when you know, how much does that translate to, I want to invite this guy into this tournament when he's shooting 76, 81 and he's missing the cut. So it's a business decision too, and I think Ricky knows that, and it makes it tough. But I hope that Ricky's relying on guys like Jordan that have absolutely been through this and have found their way back. And I have high hopes that Ricky gets his game back together. It'd be really, really good for the game. It'd be good to kind of get everything back together and make him feel a part of things again. I mean, him not being a part of a team competition just doesn't seem right. It seems so odd. I mean, it's not like Anthony Kim where he vanished for reasons that no one knows. It's just the only thing that's vanished has been consistency in his golf game, and whatever thoughts were in between the years just seem to be overwhelming. So you just have to hope that he gets his game back. And his friend Jordan Spieth, I mean, he's gotten it back, and I think a lot of people left him for dead. So I think it'd be foolish to assume the same for Ricky, and I hope that it's sooner rather than later. But we'll have to see. But I mean, my heart goes out to him. I mean, golf can be such a great game when you're doing well, but when you're not, that's when a lot of more eyes sometimes are on you at that professional level, and that could potentially be something that Ricky's facing right now.
And this is just me speculating, but I have to imagine he's at least a little bit embarrassed by his omnipresence in commercials and in sponsorship agreements, things like that, without actually putting the results on the board. Like you said, it wasn't that long ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that he was top 5 in all 4 majors. So it's not like he's been faking his way through it here for several years. He won the Players Championship in 2015. He was one of the youngest Ryder Cup competitors ever, way back in 2010. Easy to forget that now, and he came through with a big half point on the road for the U.S. So he's got the bona fides, and going back to his time at Oklahoma State, obviously, before that, it's not like he is all flash and no substance. It's just that right now the substance has fallen off. But a good thing about golf is that you have a long career if you take care of yourself. And I know that Ricky, as you talked about with Jordan, has had a baby now. He's married as well. So it could just be a recalibration and a reorganization of priorities. Take it from me, it is difficult at times to figure out what you can leave in your life and what you can't, and what needs to tighten up in terms of self-discipline and making sure that you get the important things in during the day without compromising your commitments at home. So nothing that any new father or mother or wife or husband or anyone who's gone through any kind of change at home can't relate to, but it's just when you're under the pressure of PGA Tour golf, where you got to play well to be seen on the weekend and play well to have a chance to continue to rise up the rankings. It's nothing's handed to you in golf. You have to eat what you kill, and so far the pickings have been slim for Ricky Fowler over the past couple of years, really. All right, well, speaking of struggling, Zach, the Korn Ferry Tour is the top minor league tour, if you will, the main feeder system for the PGA Tour, and used to be called Nationwide, used to be called the Nike Tour, the Web.com Tour. I think the Ben Hogan Tour was the first name for it back in the mid-'90s, but neither here nor there. An outspoken member of the pro golf scene is Grayson Murray, for good and bad reasons over the years, I suppose, depending on your opinion. But he was outspoken just this last week, Zach. You brought this to my attention. Grayson Murray had a top 20 finish on the Korn Ferry Tour. You think, hey, that's pretty good, right? At least he's making out with some profit from the whole expedition. Remember, these guys aren't typically flying private. They're not flying private on the Korn Ferry Tour, I wouldn't think. Could be driving to certain events depending on where they are on the schedule. They're basically like you and I, except they play pro golf for a living. But he said that despite the top 20 finish, he actually came out on the negative side when you factor in all the expenses that came with getting to the event. So is this a good thing, this urgency, Zach, to finish higher than top 20, I guess, in order to break even in some of these situations? Or is it a bad thing? Does it make it too much of a desperate situation? Does the lack of resources out there on the Korn Ferry Tour make it basically not feasible for certain members of the population, people who aren't independently wealthy or people who don't have sound financial backing. Does it take that possibility away? Does it shrink the potential field, I suppose, for people who can succeed on the Korn Ferry Tour and move on by way of merit to the PGA Tour? And is this a problem? And is this even fixable? Because someone's got to pay for the sponsorship. Someone has to underwrite these tournaments, and money isn't unlimited, as we all know. So do you think there's a solution to this sort of an issue, if you think if it is a problem on the Korn Ferry Tour?
Well, first, I'd like to start off by saying this is maybe the second time in a year we've brought up Grayson Murray's name.
Yeah.
If you had us mentioning Grayson Murray, take a shot or a drink of whatever your preferred beverage is, as Matt is demonstrating right now. So, but in all seriousness,
just water, by the way.
Okay, sure, yeah. Anyways, in all seriousness, it's tough because the source of this complaint is one that has been very controversial in golf, and is someone that has criticized in the past and gotten a very mixed, leaning negative reaction towards that. As you mentioned, he was a top 26 finish last week, so it's tough because it shows how competitive and how small the margin for error is. And you have guys that have so much genuine talent that, I mean, look at Phil Mickelson, for example. He was in the top 50 for years. I mean, it's nuts. Just what the game that he has and how consistent his game is and how was able to keep himself in relatively good form for such a long period of time. It's the same thing with Tiger Woods' made cut streak, which will never be touched again. I mean, it's crazy when you look at the talent on the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour too, which is finally starting to see some rise in its purses in the last few years here, which is important as well. But it shows, I mean, like most sports, golf is not a cheap sport for a variety of reasons that a lot of people that are average Joes like yourself and myself aren't aware of. I mean, you have the travel, you have the lodging, flights cancel, planes change, you get sick and you have to change your departure dates. Where are you staying? How many days? What are you eating? How many people are you with? Are you rooming with people? Yada, 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 yada. Are you flying, in the case of the PGA Tour, are you a top guy where you can fly private or first class consistently and afford it? I mean, it's like you and me. Sometimes these guys and girls struggle to budget. And it's very, very difficult. And they chase that dream, and when things aren't necessarily going in that direction, I mean, Grayson Murray had a good year or two on tour where he had some decent form, but it seems like the golf has been on the decline. And when you don't get the results, and now he's top 25ing a Korn Ferry Tour event, it becomes a little bit more noticeable. And should it be a cry for help? I think for guys that are trying to take that next step, it is, but you also have those guys that realize that this is not a financial gain. So what they do sometimes is just recreationally wait. But these are guys that are in their 40s or mid-40s waiting until they turn 50 to join the PGA Tour Champions. And then at that point, it's all fun. Grayson Murray's not approaching that age, or at least the Grayson Murrays of the world aren't approaching that age. This is a problem where getting a general sponsorship from insert company here and then getting a sponsor's exemption to play this event or Monday qualifying for this event is great until it becomes commonplace for your game. And then the pressure's on you to be one of those top 25 guys, or you're financially potentially screwing yourself. And then you have to make a decision. And don't get me wrong, what the Korn Ferry and what the Symetra Tours do is fantastic and important for golf. But on the other hand, you have guys that don't necessarily have the game to get in that winner's circle, and they can't afford for that not to happen, and then they have to rely on those couple of weeks after the regular season's done to do that, or to find, in the old days, find Q school and find ways to get that to work out. And it really mentally wears on you. And sometimes people have the game, but because the mental space where they're stressed and they're presses, you can have all the shots in the bag, but if the head's not right, the result might not be there. So there's so much to consider, and for once, his comments are so valid because golf is in a place where it can help people like Grayson Murray. I mean, some golfers helped him when he needed to get help off of the golf course, and some players were more receptive towards helping him with that. But on the course, the results just haven't come consistently in recent play. And guys like that are either trying to find ways to Monday qualify or have been that one-time PGA Tour winner that can get into an event here or there every year, but aren't expected to contend. I mean, these are the options that they're facing, and this is a reality for that journeyman or journeywoman golfer, and it's very, very tough. And PGA Tour provides the opportunity for them to play, but the rest is up to them, and that's where the pressure is. I mean, do you fly down the day early to try to find lightning in a bottle and find your game? You do? Okay, great. Well, you're paying for an extra day of lodging, you're paying for this, that, and the other. So, I mean, you're forced to make a choice sometimes. And it's tough. And sometimes if you're not playing, I mean, that also affects the mindset too. I mean, you're not competing at the level. Maybe you feel this is what your gift is. And because of how you've been playing, that opportunity doesn't present itself. So certainly it's very challenging. And I do empathize with him and other individuals that are in similar situations. It's tough. And I know there's cynical people out there that'll say, oh, yeah, we'll play golf better. It's not that simple. And if it was that simple, you'd think he would already have an answer for it. I mean, he grinds and she grinds and they grind on the range every time they possibly can. You can't imagine how many putts they're probably hitting. You can't imagine how many TrackMan sessions there are trying to find answers. It's not always that simple. And it's very tough. I mean, golf offers potentially more of a situation than anybody. I mean, even in minor league baseball, you're going to see maybe, 1,000 people there at a game. At Korn Ferry, there's going to be 2, 3, 5,000 people that are there that are going to be watching you play. And whether you succeed or you fail, they're going to have a front row seat to see all of it. It's the beauty, but it's also the agony of the sport. And it's very challenging. And again, I mean, just yourself and myself, we've seen our struggles on the golf course, and that can be tough to swallow and to take home. So for a guy like him, who that's how he makes his money and that's how he finds happiness, I'm sure that hasn't been the case right now, at least to his liking. It clearly not to his liking because he's in the red every week. So, or at least on a consistent enough basis that he was frustrated enough to make that remark. So it's very, very tough. I mean, as much as we'd like to talk about the Scotty Shefflers, as much as we'd like to talk about, hey, is this guy going to Saudi Arabia or not? This is the real struggle right here. This is this part of the sport that we could try collectively as golfers, as organizations, to try to fix. And right now, there need to be more people that are on board with this. I think that Grayson being the one that talks about it might not make much of a change, but at least that wheel is turning, and maybe it can result in something. I mean, we can all, as people of lovers of the sport, want to see golf in as good of a form as possible. And there's more opportunities than ever, but it's not a perfect situation, and I think this illustrates it pretty well.
I think the question that the Korn Ferry Tour has to answer, and by extension the PGA Tour has to answer, is this truly a developmental league, or is this just a way to graduate a couple of guys per year? Because if it's truly a developmental league, then you will invest in not just the people who are winning or in the top 10 every week on the Korn Ferry Tour. You'll invest in the top 20, top 30, top 40. And we've seen some initiatives. We've seen the PGA Tour University program that's given some exemptions for top collegiate competitors to go on and play on the PGA Tour and the Korn Ferry Tour as well. So I'm not saying they're not trying, but Murray makes a point, and it's even worse on the Symetra Tour for the ladies' side of things, because there's less money in the women's side of the game from a sponsorship standpoint. So you have to be even better on the Symetra Tour to even have a chance to break even and make it something that you can devote 3, 5, 7, 10 years of your life to, which in many cases in the sport of golf, it's the kind of game that you can grind over it for more than a decade and still realistically feel like you're on the verge of a breakthrough, just because there isn't that attrition rate when you get into your mid-30s like there is in other sports. You can play well and play very well into your 40s, and who knows, maybe even into your 50s. That could be the new standard coming up here in just a little bit, as we saw with Phil Mickelson last year. An outlier, sure, but it does show the possibilities. So if golf's a sport for a lifetime, like we'd like to talk about, then maybe there needs to be more of an initiative to keep more young players viable, more developing players viable in these development tours, so that we can increase that talent pool and make it a better sport overall. Because like you said at the top of your response there, Zach, to my question, golf is an expensive sport, and it's a sport like hockey, like lacrosse, which has traditionally limited its it's talent based, for lack of a better term. I hate to put it that impersonally, but I will in this case, just to generalize. It's limited. It's talent based because of the amount of capital it takes to get involved with it, even at just the rank amateur level, like how you and I play, let alone the folks who want to actually devote their time to make it a huge part of their lives and make it their livelihoods, hopefully. So there's still an issue there. I'm not sure there's an easy answer, but I do know there's plenty of money in the game. Maybe we can distribute it a little bit better in order to make situations like what Grayson Murray is talking about a thing of the past, where you can finish top 30 on the Korn Ferry Tour. That's a very good result, by the way. You could argue it's the second best league in the world some weeks. And if you're not in the top 20, then you're not even breaking even. I think that's a problem with sustainability, at least for those of us who don't have our mommies and daddies and our trust funds behind us to keep bankrolling things and keep giving us chance after chance. All right, Zach, good stuff. You want to tease that piece coming up? I mentioned you talked with Nathan Smith. I don't know if I mentioned his name at the top of the show, but I'll throw it out there. Let folks know what you're working on for the site.
Well, Nathan Smith was somewhat recently announced as the Walker Cup captain in a couple of iterations, which is, first of all, a great local angle, but also unconventional that they've announced the next two captains pretty much in rapid-fire succession and that there's a clear plan. So how did he react to the news? What's he planning on doing? And there's also potential for a 9-hole spot there as well, which he was receptive to. So plenty coming there. And also, for the first time since 2019, I have been given a golf credential to cover a PGA Tour event again. So a couple of weeks ago, as you all know from the last Par 4, I went down to TPC Potomac, buried a 60-foot birdie putt on 6, by the way. That'll never happen again. But regardless of that, I will be covering the Wells Fargo Championship here in a couple of weeks at TPC Potomac. So spend a 3-day weekend out there, and it'll just be good to walk again. I mean, I've been fortunate to cover the LPGA Tour and PGA Tour champions and be credentialed for the Korn Ferry since this pandemic began. But now that it seems like things are opening back up again, it seems like there's more of a willingness to have more media back, and that includes myself. So I'm glad to provide coverage under this Pittsburgh Golf Now umbrella for that. I'm glad that, being that it's in DC, they're willing to have me. So a huge thank you to Lee Patterson and Gary Soba, the media relations and the head of Wells Fargo Championship, for having us out there, and expect a piece for Media Day related to that, and of course more coverage as it comes closer to the time. Already Rory McIlroy among those set to tee up for that event.
Nice little break for us and for you that the Wells Fargo Championship moves north for a year with the conflict with the President's Cup, of course. So, hey, take advantage of it, Zach. Good to see. And we'll be looking for your coverage on the website. So thanks to all of you for watching our latest PGN Par 4. Pittsburgh Golf Now is your place for local golf news. And ramping it up, as you've just heard here on the show. For Zach Weiss, I'm Matt Gajtka. Talk to you next time.